today I have a very special guest. He is a special effects artist, director, producer, writer, editor, amongst other talents. One of his movies, Terror Tunes, is on Amazon Prime at the minute. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome director of Man of Many Talents, Joe Castro. How are you doing today, Joe?
Hello there. I am doing well. I haven't turned into a zombie yet. With the corona virus going around, and just trying to be a safe, productive citizen here in the United States, in Los Angeles, California. How about yourself? How's it going over there?
Yeah, we're not too bad. Prime Minister's making an announcement about everything over here, so it's a bit of something nice to do amongst all the doom and gloom. So, right. So, shall we get on with it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm excited for this.
So, I mentioned a minute ago that you're a director, producer, writer. Is there anything you can't do?
I am a director, and I do special effects, but I kind of more, can I use this? I don't know if I'm using this term correctly. Fancy myself as a director of special effects.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah,
I was going to say you can use it if you want.
Yeah, and that's because there are other directors that work very well with actors, and I work in the same way very well with special effects. So while some directors are very talented at getting the actors to do what they need to do to get the shot, and they work well with the script, I'm very, very good at working on set with the special effects and getting the director what he needs on camera, and I can do that in a way that most directors do not know how to do. Even directors that work with special effects come to me and ask me for my direction and advice when it comes to producing a special effects shot.
Wow. So, carry on.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, so I didn't really answer your question. Is there anything I can't do? I don't consider myself one of these directors that works extremely well with dialogue and getting into the character and that kind of thing. I always as of late I've been collaborating with my partner Steven Escobar when it comes to directing, and Steven kind of helps fill that void when we were working with the talent on set. So where my mind is focusing on the visual effects aspect of the film, my partner helps me to cultivate and nurture the what do you call it? The working with the actors and the character development.
So you started you were in the business when you started, age 15. What made you want to be in the horror genre?
Well, growing up, I worked with paper mache and all the stuff that young people do growing up as far as talent and artistry, and eventually one of my cousins took me to see a rated R horror film, and at the time when I was young, you could have your parents sign you into a rated R horror film, or if the movie was NC-17, which meant it was unrated, like an Italian horror film that came over to the States. NC-17 wasn't really a rating at the time. It was U, which was unrated, which was basically it was as if it were pornographic. The MPA didn't rate it, and your parents could sign you in at the movie theater and could watch it by yourself. And so I used to go to the theater and see unrated horror films from overseas, and all the Fulci films, the Italian zombie films really got me into making horror films. And I saw most of his films in the movie theater when they were first released in the United States. I was at like 11, 12, 13 years old, and I was watching these unrated, very gory, very grisly horror films, and I knew that when I grew up, that's exactly what I wanted to do.
So, your way of filmmaking, is there any horror movies or way of horror movies as such that inspire you? Or does it just come naturally off the top of your head?
Well, there's nothing really specific that that inspires me. Like I can't pinpoint. Just hold on a second. 1 second.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey. Good God, it's crazy here. First of all, what is somebody doing ringing my doorbell? And hold on. Can you please take care of this? Okay. Anyways. Okay, so what was the question you asked me?
Was there any horror movies as such that inspires you in the way you make your own movies, or does it just come naturally to you?
Oh, yeah. That's a good question. Is there any horror movies that inspire me? Well, the truth is that I think the thing that inspires me most is... The thing that inspires me most is Mother Nature. Mother Nature. There's things in the real world that are so horrific and so ghastly that they can't be made up. And as of late, I can find this stuff online in pictures and images and even in videos from around the world. Those are the most horrific events. Maybe as growing up, like I said, it was other people's movies. All the classic horror royalty, John Carpenter, George Romero, Tom Savini, Stephen King, David Cronenberg. All these directors made amazing movies and inspired me as a young person. But today I get most of my inspiration from the real world because there are so many horrifying things happening in this world.
And if it's horrifying and it's true, that makes it that little bit more terrifying because this could actually happen to me.
Absolutely.
Now, I must ask this because I'm just actually quite astonished by this. But you're actually in the Guinness Book of World Records.
My partner Steven Escobar and I have the Guinness Book of World Record for the highest body count in a slasher movie. And so, yes, to answer your question, yes, we are in the Guinness Book of World Record.
How many?
It's 155 kills in a slasher movie. It's for a movie that my partner and I created back in 2012 titled The Summer of Massacre. And, it's a pretty graphic film. It's kind of more like a candy-coated gore. There's a lot of kills, on-screen kills, but half of them are CGI and half of them are practical. And we did a lot of CGI in the film for the blood and the gore because it just became so gruesome having it all practical that the CGI kind of gave it more of a fun kind of more of a fun element to the film as opposed to just watching mutilation after mutilation after mutilation. So, yeah.
So the movies you make, as I understand it, are very low budget. Do you prefer to make low budget horror, or if somebody said to you, came to you with a big paycheck and say, right, we'll give you as much CGI as you need, you can make the biggest horror film you can. What would you be happy with?
Well, absolutely, I'd be happy with a bigger budget film. But every movie that I make is important to me, and every movie that I work on is important to me because my work is important to me, and I always make sure that the quality of my work, my portion of the movie, is always at the highest level of detail and quality. So it does not matter what the budget of the film is. My work must always be exquisite. My work must always look movie studio quality professional.
So before I ask you about Terror Tunes, which I actually have watched, I must ask, what are your rules for making a horror movie?
Well, that movie was made in 2001, and we shot the entire movie in 3 days.
Wow.
This was my third film I ever made, and I made 18 features since. I would never be able to make a movie the same way today. And I was 31 years old at the time. That was 19 years ago. And but when I made that film, I was a rebel, and no one was telling me what was good, what was bad. I didn't have anybody putting any rules or regulations on me. So I just was kind of like a free-for-all kind of thing, and I was able to make that film with like I said, as a rebel. And I don't make films that way, though, today. Wait, what was your question again? What kind of expectations do I? What did you say?
What makes a good horror film for you?
Oh, what makes a good horror film for me? Oh, okay, yeah, that's a tough question to answer. I think a good horror film for me, I like my horror to have a bit of supernatural element in it. A lot of movies these days, I believe, they categorize them as horror films, but they're really torture movies.
Yeah.
And I really don't get into that. I don't have any sort of appetite for watching people kill people for the sake of hate. There's plenty of that on the news. I don't need to pay money or go out of my way to watch more of it in the movies. So whenever I make a horror film, a good horror film for me has this sort of mysterious supernatural element to it. Whether the killer or the antagonist has some sort of, like I said, some sort of supernatural, otherworldly element to it. I always like to include that in my films.
So there's more than one Terror Tunes movie, isn't there? Is there about 5?
Yeah. Well, there are. We have shot 5 films, but right now there's only been 3 movies released. Hope to have the 4th film released by the end of this year. And most people get the title confused. It's Terror Tunes, and Tunes is spelled Toons, like the last part of the word cartoons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Siri still can't get it right. Whenever I say the title Terror Tunes, every once in a while Siri will spell it correctly. Only because the 3rd Terror Tunes is available on iTunes, so sometimes it does come up correctly. But yeah, and making the Terror Tunes franchise is a guilty pleasure for me, because in the cartoon dimension anything is possible. And whenever we sit down to make one of those films, there is no template of what we can do. Anything is possible, and I try to enjoy and relish making the films.
Well, like I said, I have actually watched it, and I must admit, the beginning is, quite bloody and gory, to say the least. So for anyone who hasn't watched it, that is listening, and does actually want to watch it, what would you say is would you say that's an indication about how the rest of the movie will go?
Okay, so I don't know if what the viewers have access to in the United States. There's a channel called the Cartoon Network, which is has their nightly lineup is called Adult Swim, and it's basically cartoons for adults. And Terror Tunes is basically cartoons for adults, and they're very gory, silly, sometimes in very bad taste. And very brightly colored. Sometimes they're very fever dream-like, nightmarish, and surreal. And if you like cult cinema, then you will love Terror Tunes. Yeah, Terror Tunes is basically killer cartoons made by the devil, and that's the premises of the films. The devil made these evil cartoon characters come to life in our live-action world to kill innocent people one by one. And it's a very simple storyline, and very with a very kind of like imaginative techniques used to bring it all to life.
Because I did actually quite enjoy it, especially all the gore in it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Like I said, we shot that movie in 3 days for $2,300, $2,300 American dollars. Like I said, but I was 31 when we made it. And, we shot it over Easter weekend, and we shot it on a Friday. We spent 12 hours on the Friday shooting it. Saturday we shot for 17 hours. And then Sunday we shot actually 25 hours. So Monday morning, as the sun was coming up and we were finishing the movie, people were getting in their cars, going to work, and the birds were chirping, and the movie was done. And I remember thinking, wow, we did it. We shot a whole movie in 3 days.
Right, so just before we go on to the horror quiz, if anyone wants to follow you on social media or watch your movies, how will they go about it?
Okay, well, you can Google me or IMDb me. It's Joe Castro. And you can find me on Facebook. I'm always online on Facebook. Reach out to me. Send me a direct message. It's facebook.com/Joe.Castro. On Instagram, my handle is Joe_Castro_director. And reach out to me, send me a friend request, follow me, but more importantly, send me a message and say hello, and let's make some horror movies.
That's right. I've prepared a little horror quiz for you.
Okay.
Are you ready for it?
Okay.
Right. So, do you prefer original horror over remade horror? I'll just give you an example. So, Sam Raimi's original Evil Dead, made in the 80s, would you prefer movies like that over, say, Sam Raimi's Evil Dead that was remade about 6 years ago?
Right. That's an excellent question. And this is what I have to say about that. I love both of those movies.
I do.
I think they were both excellent. In fact, I absolutely, the first film was groundbreaking and is horror royalty. But the second one was also very groundbreaking in what they did. And you could tell it was made with talent, love, and a passion for making something amazing. So I just want to put that out there and say I love both of those films.
I actually thought that the remake was actually better than the original, just because I thought the remake was actually a lot more brutal than the last one.
Oh, exactly. Absolutely. The remake was by far scarier than the first one. But they both are very entertaining, and there's something to appreciate for both of them. Yeah. Absolutely correct. Yeah.
In your horrors, do you prefer CGI or no CGI?
Well, I prefer, whenever I'm making a special effect or in horror films, for them to use all the talents that they have practical in the real world. And then if they need to use computer-generated effects to make the effect even more intense, then by all means, please do it. So, but I always prefer for them to start with, a practical effect.
Yeah. Right. This is franchises now. So, which franchise would you say is best out of Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th?
Well, I'm going to have to say that I really couldn't answer that one or the other, because both of them have a special place in my heart, and they both are very entertaining franchises.
All right, I'll give you one a bit more, I'll say more latest, I'll say. So there's the Saw franchise or the Insidious franchise.
There we go. So now you got me in the corner. I have not seen the Insidious films. And the first Saw film was, once again, one of these, we discussed this earlier, one of these torture kind of films. And even though I thought it was very clever and very well done, the first one, I didn't see any of the others, only because I had my fill of torture after seeing the first one. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. But would you also like to know that every Saw movie after that still had a twist that no one ever saw coming?
Oh, I'm sure it did. I'm sure they're very clever filmmakers, and I'm sure it did. No.
All right. Who would you say, not so much the better film director, but who would you say has more of an effect on the horror genre, Wes Craven or Sam Raimi?
Okay. Let's see. Let me think about that. I would probably tend to lead towards Wes Craven, only because I believe he's made more horror films than Sam, and yeah. So I would say Wes Craven, only on the sole fact that he has made more horror films than Sam.
Yep. Yeah. Right, we're nearly there. What's your favourite horror film that you've watched?
Do I have to pick just one?
Or is it a case of you're like me and you have certain favourites and you don't have a favourite over them?
Yeah, I don't have a favourite over. Each one holds a special place in my heart. I can give you my top 5.
Okay, then top 5 will do.
Top 5, here we go. The original Poltergeist.
Oh.
The Gates of Hell. The Blood Feast, the Herschel Gordon Lewis's first slasher movie ever made. And let's see, would have to go up there. Let me think. Wow. Maybe Silence of the Lambs or probably the original Exorcist, yeah.
Oh, God. My sister had nightmares watching Exorcist, and I might point out she's the sort of woman who doesn't have nightmares. So that tells you something, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, it's a very, very classic horror. I call it horror royalty film. You know, it's a horror for all occasions.
Yeah. All right, then what's your least favourite horror?
Okay, I don't really have a least favorite horror. Only that, like I said, I don't like watching torture horror, but I couldn't pick one film for that. I believe that movies either entertain the person that's watching it or it doesn't. There is no in between. I don't believe that horror or movies are either good or bad, right or wrong. I believe they are either because they either entertain the person who's viewing it or they don't.
Yeah.
And it's somewhere on this planet someone loves a movie that I didn't like, and vice versa. So it's very subjective.
All right, since you've been in the horror genre for quite a while, we'll say, what's the most ingenious horror kill that you've done and that you've seen?
The one that I've done and then one that I've seen?
Yep.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, let's start with the one that I've seen. I'm going to say the one that had probably the most impact on me the first time I saw it has probably got to be Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D. I saw that movie in the theater when it was released, when the actor gets his head smushed in and his eyeball jumps out at the camera.
Yeah.
When I saw that in the movie theater, it just blew my mind. I was 13 years old, and it was like, oh my gosh, I want to do this forever. And then as far as my own kills, I've done several really cool on-screen kills. But I can't pick just one. Let's see.
Have a few, just so you've got a bit of variety in it.
I did this scene in Herschel Gordon Lewis's sequel to Blood Feast back in 2001. He made a movie called Blood Feast 2, All You Can Eat, and there's a scene where a girl gets her head, all the skin pulled off of her head, filleted off of her head, and then but she's still alive. And she's screaming, and then they use a turkey carver to cut open her skull cap and pull out her brains.
Nice.
And that was probably it was a very effective, very graphic kill. Yeah, and I think Herschel really was able to capture the torture and the horror that he wanted to with that kill, with her still being alive. So I would say that's probably one of my favorite. There's also a scene in Terror Toons 2 where one of the actors, Jonathan Kowalski, gets a giant hypodermic needle stuck in his ass.
Oh. Did you just say in his backside?
Yeah, his
God.
In his butt cheek, as the lead villain's giving him a big injection. But it's a giant needle. It's the actual needle's like the size of a pencil.
Oh God!
And the killer grinds it around in his butt cheek, and it's just so horrendous. It's so realistic. It's so horrendous. I could watch the whole movie just for that one effect.
I think I've just been traumatized by that.
If you get a chance to see Part 2, there's a scene where like this giant, and let me see. But I have a lot of favorites along the way. There's a lot of really fun kills in the Summer of Massacre.
Yeah.
That. It's kind of all over the place. There's some surreal stuff in there, and there's some very realistic stuff. When I made that film, I was going to school to learn computer-generated effects. So the whole film is basically a big, it's a big experiment. It's kind of like my schoolwork, and there's a lot of mistakes in it, but there's a lot of great stuff in it. And I was learning at the time, but I don't regret any of it. I think it all turned out to be a really fun film. So.
Always live your life with no regrets, as I always say. Right,
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Joe.
I appreciate you taking the time to talk.
I appreciate you having the time to talk to me.
Absolutely, and please stay safe, and I look forward to talking with you more in the future.
So, just for future use, would you ever fancy having like a big horror movie discussion, one that would probably last longer than about half an hour?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
You both be safe over there, and we will talk to you real soon.
You take care of yourself.
Thank you, sir.
Take care, sir. Bye.
Bye-bye.